daughter, who's the mother of the grandson, she and her husband were going. Obviously, the grandson's already there. So they took the whole entourage up there. And, of course, so I'm going to put the end of it. They came down all the way from going down to 17 to 3. And that's the way it chased out.
Hi, Mike.
Good evening, everyone. This is the regular council meeting for the month of December. Marianne, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Diambra.
Here.
Vice Mayor Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Brandon. Councilmember Prince.
Here.
Councilmember Young.
Here.
Okay, thank you. This evening's invocation, I believe Pastor Paul, you're going to do the honor for us.
Very Merry Christmas to you all. There's some Christmas pumpkin nut bread, I think, for all of you on the counter. Please enjoy. All right, Father, we pray tonight, and we thank you for this evening's council meeting, Father. As we come to the end of a fiscal year, I'm grateful for all that's happened this year, Father, and for the blessing of being able to live in this wonderful, wonderful place. Father, I pray for wisdom and guidance for our council tonight as we discuss the affairs of the village. Pray, Father, for all of our employees, all of our public safety, Father, all who are part of making this village of Tequesta what it is. Thank you for those who sit on the dais tonight, Father, that you have sovereignly placed to lead us and guide us and direct us. Thank you for all of our guests here tonight, Father. I pray for our military men and women, Lord, tonight being away, especially at this time of the year, that you would just be with them, Father, in a very special and near and dear way, and their families as well, as they are protecting us and providing the freedom that we so enjoy, even to be sitting here in this place tonight. And then, Father, for our chili cook-off, Father, what an amazing, amazing event. And Lord, I am just so thankful, we all are, for Dave and all of our fire rescue personnel, ours here and those in Palm Beach County, and for the incredible agencies and charities that will benefit, Father, from the outpouring of love and support from so many people. So, Father, this is a special time. We thank you for it, and we give you praise and glory. Thank you for this wonderful time of the year. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Yeah.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous, 4-0. So we're going to start off the evening with 3 presentations. The first one, Chief Trube, this involves the aforementioned chili cook-off, which I know was a wild success. Chief Trube, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager, Village Attorney, and our clerk, and of course all the residents in the room. We had a absolutely fantastic Tequesta chili cook-off this year. But I would be a little remiss if I didn't think back in time, 11 years ago, when a young firefighter actually approached me and said in a very thick Irish accent, something about chili and beer and a fundraiser and in Tequesta. And I remember telling him, I don't think so. First of all, I'm not real sure what you said, but I don't think so. But he was committed. And now 10 years later, or 10 events later, I should say, I have the honor and privilege of introducing the heart and soul of the Tequesta Chili Cook-Off. And I'm going to let him do the details. Lieutenant David McGovern.
So, yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years, getting up in front of you guys and making speeches and everything else. And most of the veterans keep telling me, shorten that speech, will you? I don't have long left. So I shortened it way down this year. So firstly, let me just thank the mayor, council members, village manager, for giving us the opportunity to come here this evening and to present these checks to these 5 amazing charities. The charities that we will be presenting checks to tonight are Operation 300, Renewal Coalition, Tequesta Friends of Public Safety, Southeast Florida Honor Flight, and Wounded Veterans Relief Fund. 5 amazing charities I have had the honor of being involved with or witnessing what they do, and just so proud that we had the opportunity to be able to support them from year 1 to where we are today. So, and I'll talk a little bit later on just on from year 1 and year 10 where we ended up, because again, I'm like a kid on Christmas right now, because what we did this year was unbelievable to me. It shocked me, and I'm just like, I'm over the moon. So let me just get a few thank yous out of the way, and then we have a special video that we want to show to remind everybody in this room why we actually raised the money. So this year was our 10th annual Tequesta Chili Cook-Off and Beer Tasting. It was another massive success. 35 teams. We had flyovers, pipers, music, raffles, auctions, sponsors, and we had 3,500 people show up this year. That is an awful lot of people, as you know. We went through 63 kegs, if anybody wanted. And we only had 65, so thank God. I would like to start by just recognizing some very, very important people in this room. And if they're here, if they can stand up for me, please, because they help me all year round by putting this together. So if you're here, just stand up for a minute so you can be recognized. Joanne Burnshead, retired Mayor Brennan, Chief Winan, Chief Medina, Chief Trube, Shauna Fawcett, Alex Stark, Amber Krause, Peter Allen, Bud Burnshead, Rick Gass, Angie Schumacher, Vanessa Allison, Keith Smolin, Doug Chambers, hardest working man in Tequesta, and Cindy MacDonald, who is not here with us tonight, but my God, that woman is a superstar at what she does. I cannot ask for a better group of people to work with, and I appreciate everything you do to make our event a huge success every year. I personally know the amount of work it takes to pull this off, and without a team effort, it's just impossible. That's our team all year round, multiple meetings, changing everything, making my life hell, but without them, it doesn't work. So I'm just so proud of every single one of them. Every year they show up and they keep wanting to make it bigger, better, and that's just great to have them type of people surrounding you. That's what makes it all happen. To all our volunteers, all the students from Palm Beach State Fire College, the retired firefighters from Palm Beach Gardens, the Palm Beach Gardens firefighters, and the rest of the Tequesta firefighters and their families, thank you for all you do for this event and our community. To our sponsors, you are amazing people to work with, and our event is a little bit easier to put on each year because of the continued support. We have our biggest sponsor with us tonight. They support everything that we have done for the past 10 years. They've been with us for 10 years, and that is Mark and Jan Byers with DSS. Mark over there. And Bob Pedraza. They're not even sponsors anymore. It's like family now, isn't it? Like, it's crazy. It's like we're like family. We're actually going to Ireland all together as well. So yeah, they've already. So, and on another note, if anyone was at the cook-off, they know we had a record-breaking, and we sold at the American flag, and the great thing about this year was it was the 10-year anniversary of the Chili Cook-Off. It was also the 20-year anniversary of 9/11, and we had an American flag made out of retired fire hose, and on the end of it we had a picture of the firefighters raising the flag on the pile, and it went for a record amount. And that lady is actually here with us also. Joan bought that flag for $6,500. We didn't think it was going to stop, did we? I'm not going to repeat what I said on the day, but hey, it was. I nearly fell off the stage. There you go. Also, I don't know if Steve Brandt made it tonight. Dry Pro, he's another person who lives in the village and is an amazing ambassador and supports all our events, always there giving and helping out whatever way he possibly can. He also helped us this year with a foundation, the Carol O'Connell Foundation, and they made a really nice donation to all the charities also. All of this was accumulated into one and to our final total at the end. I would like to thank our co-host and great of this event, which is also Fran Andrulevich from Tequesta Brewing Company, and thank you for his continued support and everything that he contributes to this event every year. So just before we present the checks, that's most of my thank yous. If I forgot anyone, please forgive me. There's so many people that are involved. We had 165 volunteers to make this work this year. So it's a lot of moving parts, and so you can see. So if I just forget anyone, please forgive me. I appreciate every single one of you, and none of this is possible without the team, so thank you. So just before we do the checks, I would like to play a video. We made this video many years ago, and we played it at the cook-off. So we're going to turn the lights down if we can, just for a minute. I want everyone to watch this video. This is why we do what we do. This is why we raise the money we raise. And I'm going to say nothing else. I'm just going to let the video say the rest at this time.
Broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Ooh, mountains, we gon' walk it out, and and I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the age. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. The silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Ooh, mountains, bring it to its feet. Ooh, mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again.
So that's why we raise the money. That's why we do what we do. That's why we're out there and we put all this effort in every year. I'm good. I'll just take a second. So I just want to put it all into perspective. Year one, we raised $8,000. Year two, we raised $12,300. Year three, we raised $25,100. Year four, we raised $37,100. Year five, we raised $36,000. Year six, we raised $40,000. Year seven, we raised $49,100. Year eight, we raised $51,700. Year nine, we raised $52,800. Thanks to the generosity and the support of everybody involved in our 10th annual Tequesta Chili Cook-Off and Beer Tasting, this year we raised $110,500. So you guys don't have to do the math. We will be giving every charity, 5 charities this year. We added a charity, and we'll be giving every charity here tonight a check for $22,100. So an idea that started 11 years ago, to this date, Tequesta firefighters and all their helpers and all their volunteers have donated $426,056.21 to our charities. That is something we are so proud of. So on behalf of me and everybody that's here and all our guys, thank you so much. You guys keep doing what you're doing. We love it, and we'll see you all next year. I have these big checks over here, and then retired Mayor Brennan has the little ones that mean all the importance. So what we're going to do is, if you don't mind, guys, if they can stand up the front and just get a quick picture with these, if that's okay. And then if I don't know if any of the charities want to say a word or two, if you don't mind if they're allowed to say a word or two. I know,
Absolutely.
Mike, you mentioned there's somebody had said something. So I'll just leave these up here, and then you guys can come grab them in a minute. They should all say the same.
Need some help handling all that money.
I don't see the money. The mayor doesn't let me near it. So if anybody has any ideas for next year, please let me know. Just to let you know. Yeah. Did you want to say something? Sure.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Mike Durkee. I'm the Executive Director for the Wounded Veterans Relief Fund. I'm also a combat veteran. In 2005, I served and was deployed over in Iraq and Baghdad. Lost some friends overseas. And then in 2012, 2013, I was over in Kandahar, Afghanistan, and lost a good friend overseas to a helicopter crash. So I'm just blown away with what Dave has done, and so honored that Wounded Veterans Relief Fund has been added to the list. So thank you so much, Dave, and I want to thank all of our donors and supporters and volunteers for making this happen. Our wonderful sponsors like DSS, they've always been around and supporting so many of our veteran charities here locally. And without you, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. Also, me and my Coast Guard buddy, you know, we cried when Dave recognizes the World War II Korean Vietnam veterans that didn't get the help and support that we do today. So I'm just very honored. Thank you.
Good evening. I can't tell you how blown away we are with what you collected. I can remember, Dave, and you can remember when we were one of the only charities, and it wasn't even this much. And for you to have 5 charities today that are receiving this dollar amount, we are so blessed and so honored that you have chosen Honor Flight to be one of those charities. As you know, Honor Flight does fly World War II, Korea, Vietnam veterans to Washington, D.C. to visit their memorials. And the veterans that were in some of those photos were so appreciative of what you all do with the medals, presenting those medals to them at each chili cook-off. And we are so honored to be one of the recipients of your charity. And you do such an awesome job. I mean, you are everywhere. You are everywhere that day. So thank you so much from Honor Flight, and we appreciate it.
I'm going to speak from over here because I taught 4-year-olds, and I know. But I don't want to turn my back on a sponsor, so I'm going to kind of scoot. You always want to treat your donors very well. I want to thank everybody for all the hard work that you put into helping us. Our program deals mainly with suicide prevention and our post 9/11 combat injured and ill service members and their families. And we've had almost 1,100 participants in our program now. And I can say that it's been extremely successful in helping them transition back into civilian life or go back into service after their medical issues have been addressed. I have our staff here tonight, which is 3 of us. So we run on a very, very slight staff for the amount of work that we do. But I wanted to thank you because without you, none of this would be possible. And I feel absolutely honored and greatness to be in the room with our first responders and the other people that are so dedicated to helping improve the lives of our veterans. And I want to particularly thank, because I used to be in politics, our town council for allowing us and becoming so involved in participating in this. So thank you, and I wish all of you a Merry Christmas. We're going to do everything we can to make sure our veterans have the best Christmas they can. So thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Tara Baldwin. I am the president of Operation 300, and our organization was founded almost 10 years ago, so we're kind of growing up together. It feels like a little bit, Dave. And it was founded in honor of my brother, Aaron, who was killed in Afghanistan in 2011. And he left behind 2 small children. So we actually take care of the families of the fallen. And our main program is adventure camps for kids who have lost a dad or a mom while in the service. And I can tell you that the need keeps growing. We have 6 to 7 camps every year, about 40 to 50 kids per year, and we're already on a waiting list for 2022. So things like this are the only way that not only we're able to fund the programs that we do run, but also to let other people know what we're doing and to really draw attention to those families that are left behind. I'm so grateful for the way that our community and Americans seem to be really stepping up for our veterans, and it's such an honor to get to be in this group with such amazing charities, and I know so many of you, and you know, I love Martin County, but I gotta tell you, like that little opening scene, I was like, man, I love Tequesta. So I don't know if I can cross the border, but I love you guys. You guys are amazing, all of you, and just Dave, getting to know you over the last 10 years, and I feel like you kind of found us when we didn't really know what we were doing, and same, I just want to echo Mark and Jan Byers and Bob Pedraza at DDS. I don't know, like, I hope God just keeps blessing you guys with bukus and bukus and bukus of money and business, because you're really good at funneling it out. Yeah, just keep growing. And
we came down here in 1997, back in December 97, we had 3 employees. Then we have over 730. And we have probably 300. Primarily work with the VA, but also outside the VA, we work with the Defense Department, different federal agencies, and also some state agencies, counties.
well, keep doing what you're doing. We're grateful.
From a small company to a bigger company, here it's part of the great part of the state.
Thank you, guys.
And also, Veterans groups, they're really fantastic. They're good, committed people. They're really, like Tara, they're different people who do a tremendous job, like Mary. And it's really, it's amazing to see them do their job and have people like Dave and everybody else step up and be able to help provide the final point.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Like I said, as your company growed, you gave back, and that's what this is all about. That's what it's all about. That's how America was built. We look after each other, we take care of each other, and that's the way if our country remembers that, we'll do great. This place will. And thank you so much for all your generosity. I know you guys want your council back, so what we're going to do is we'll take the big checks, we'll head outside, and we'll do our pictures out there, so you guys can get back to your the business of the village and stuff like that. Thank you again so much for allowing us this time, and Merry Christmas, everybody.
Dave, before you walk away, first of all, we obviously up here on the dais echo all the appreciative comments that have been made and the thank yous. And I want to also thank the charities for all the great work that you guys do in supporting our first responders, our veterans, and others. The other thing I want to do is, there's been a lot of thank yous tonight, but I want to thank Dave in particular. I mean, it's his passion and his commitment and his dedication that is the heartbeat of this event, and that has gotten us to where we are 10 years later. So, David, thank you very much for everything you've done.
All right, we will go inside. Now you all want the little checks, so let's get inside. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I know.
Hugh, I think we're gonna switch and let, just a second. I think, that's up to the mayor, but I think that's.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and switch. Aaron Dallas. So we're gonna move item 3 up to item 2 in the presentations. Aaron Dallas is the Vice President for Public Affairs Consultants. She works with Jack Corey, who's our legislative lobbyist. Aaron, welcome.
Thank you.
And we are very much looking forward to your presentation this evening.
Well, you definitely gave me an easy act to follow, so thanks for that.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Like the mayor said, my name is Erin Ballas. I'm Vice President of Public Affairs Consultants, effective Monday. So this is the first time I get to tell everybody I'm Vice President, so thank you for that. We are a small contract lobbying firm. We represent the Village of Tequesta. We represent a few other clients, but Jack and Keena work with me as well. They are husband and wife and business partners. So it's nice and tiny in our office. There's also 2 little interns. My kids have been coming to work there since they were about 3 months old. So Dayton has been employed with us for about 4 years, and Jet has been there for 2. So if you ever call and you need help and you hear screaming in the background, it's not Jack and Keena. It's probably the children. So we're going to start with last year's session because, like everything else, it was super weird. It began on March 2nd and it ended on April 30th. There were a little over 3,000 bills that were filed. Over 2,000 amendments were filed and over 3,000 votes were taken. There were 39 floor sessions, all masked, and then proceeded to be unmasked as people got vaccinated. Floor sessions are when they sit on the chamber floor. So they're called seatings in the Senate, and then they're called sessions in the House. And then 275 bills passed both chambers and went to the governor. While that session was different, well, for one thing, we weren't allowed in the building. Only Senate staff were allowed in the Senate side. You could not have a meeting with a senator in person. The Senate President was very concerned about anyone getting ill and losing quorums. So to the point where we had heard rumors that people were getting in on the side doors, and he sealed the door with a sergeant. So that ended pretty quickly. You could testify for committees at that time. You got to go to a whole separate building, and they zoomed you in, and you didn't see any of the senators while you were talking. You talked into a camera, and then the senator's screen was over to this side, so it was nice and awkward for everybody involved. In the House, you were allowed to join them in committee rooms. It was limited to how many people could come in. You were escorted up, you got a pass, you were allowed to sit in that committee for that time, and then you were escorted back out of the building. You could not go around and talk to anyone. So most of our work was done via emails, text messages, phone calls, and Zooms. It was the weirdest session I've ever been a part of, and I feel like I say that every year, but last year took the cake for sure. So, right now, we're getting ready for the 2022 session, and we've already gotten through all the committee weeks. Session will start early this year, January 11th, and amongst all of the committee meetings that were taking place, we got to have a special session. So instead of having committee weeks November 15th through the 19th, the governor called a special session. 4 bills passed. And were sent and immediately certified to him, and then he signed them the very next day in Bradenton, or in Brandon, excuse me. House Bill 1B was the COVID-19 mandates. That is basically the framework that makes sure that all businesses can operate and not enforce a vaccine mandate to any of their employees. House Bill 3B is the public records that basically removes those from public records. Should there be any issues that arise, those are no longer public record. You can't take those from the public can't request them. The Florida Occupational Safety and Health State Plan is our new OSHA. So we have separated ourselves from the federal health and safety organization, and we will be creating our own. Other states have done this. The framework for it will probably be hashed out in the regular session this year. And then House Bill 7B is more of a cleanup bill. I'm going to say about 10 years ago, the authorization was given to the Department of Health and to their secretary that they could mandate vaccines to be given should any type of significant health issues arise. That has been removed from the statute. They can no longer mandate that. So, 2022, session's coming. It's nice and early this year. Are we ready? So this year, what to expect from session is it's going to run from January 11th to March 11th. And if any of you have been in Tallahassee at those times, it is a great time to be in Tallahassee because it's not 400 degrees, but it is gray and rainy and sad. So they should hopefully be focused on their work. There's no beautiful spring days for them to get distracted by. And they should get out on time. That is one of their top priorities because while they are in session, they can't fundraise. So redistricting and reapportionment will take place this year as well. That's a constitutionally mandated activity that have to take place. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. The budget this year is in great shape, which is awesome because that also tends to lead to a really great session and to them ending on time. We do know that one of the top issues will still be COVID, specifically with staffing shortages, with supply chain issues, with all of the things that I'm sure you're feeling here as well. There has been a lot of talk about nursing shortages, how we're going to solve that problem. Nursing home issues will be a big deal. And then also getting fresh from Florida foods and supplies out because a lot of them are sitting in warehouses and they have a much shorter lifespan than, say, a TV. How are we going to get those out to market as quickly as possible? You're going to continue to see a lot of home rule issues, specifically attacks on home rule. There are some priorities that have been set forth by the president and the president and the president designate, specifically about some issues they'd like to take care of. And we're going to talk about those a little later. And then you're going to see a big shift in leadership that's going to take place. So the speaker and the president are in their last years. the new speaker designate and the new president designate will start asserting their power now. So their power will crescendo as the current sitting president and speaker will decrescendo as you move through the process. So, 2022, this is what we have so far. There are about a little over 2,000 bills that have been filed. There's a little over 1,000 appropriations bills. So in the House, it's part of their rules that in order for funds to be considered in the budgetary process, you have to file a bill. Legislators in the House have an unlimited amount of budget bills they can file, and they have to be heard in one committee of reference to be considered when we go into what's called conferencing. So each House and Senate will send a bill, will vote out a bill, they'll come to an impasse, and then they go into what's called conferencing, where they split into all different committees and they basically hash out the rest of the budget. And so it is important to have your bill heard in that time, otherwise it basically will fall out of favor and can't even be considered by the two chambers. There are 944 general bills. The 442 bills are in the House. House members this year and last year were allowed to file 7 bills. This is the first time in the entirety of my career that a House member can have more than 6. They felt like they needed a little more room, a little more opportunity to work with senators and to pass legislation. This amount doesn't include repealer bills. So you'll see some members will have multiple bills way past 7. If you file a repealer bill, so if you look at the statute and say, we got to get rid of this, it doesn't count against it. This is in an effort to have less government, and so they're trying to clean up some of those. Now, I can tell you that in the past, repealer bills that sound like good ideas have turned out to be not so good ideas. A couple years ago, a senator from this area, Senator Bogdanoff, at the time filed a repealer bill to remove the responsibility that if you ride, it was against the law to ride your bicycle with one hand. She was going to repeal that. She thought, what's the big deal? It turns out that's a very big deal. If you are in law enforcement, they use it as one of the ways that they can kind of pull somebody over, talk to them, see what's happening, and that bill didn't end up passing. So it's still against the law to ride your bicycle with one hand. So there are 491 bills in the Senate. Senate members can file as many as they want. That makes sense. If 7 bills are allowed to be filed by House members, there's 120 of them. There's only 40 Senate members, and you have to have bills moving at exactly the same rate. They have to be able to file more bills. All right, we're going to talk about legislation that the village should be focused on. The first one is Senate Bill 620, and then House Bill 569. These are by Senator Travis Hudson and Representative Lawrence McClure. I'll tell you that the Senate bill has already been heard in one committee. These bills are identical, which means that they probably are going to move. When you have 2 bills that are filed, they're identical, and they're the first bills being heard in committees, it's normally a good sign that these bills are going to have been green-lighted to the end. So this bill creates a cause of action for an established business owner to recover a loss of business damages from a county or municipality whose regulatory action has caused a significant impact to their business. It's essentially creating a Burt Harris Act for businesses. So you don't have to own the land that you have your business on, you just have to have a business. If there's a 15% loss to the business based on something that a local government has enacted, you can then bring cause to the local government. This bill is gonna change. It came out pretty aggressively and is the president designates priority, but it's going to change a lot, I think, as it moves through the process. So we'll keep Jeremy informed about all of the changes that are coming as they move forward. This one will have a lot of amendments as they work forward, because I think a lot of good, in the first committee of reference, a lot of good thoughts came up about how maybe the wording was a little too restrictive and that we needed to kind of think through how this could be done in best practices. It hasn't been heard in the House yet, but I anticipate probably in the first week or 2 of session it'll be heard in a committee. The next bill is Senate Bill 280 on local ordinances, also by Senator Travis Hudson, and then House Bill 403, local ordinances by Mike Gilambardo. If that name sounds familiar, he carried the legislation last year on home businesses. He carries a lot of legislation dealing specifically with home rule and restricting home rule. This bill has been heard in the House. It hasn't been heard in the Senate. I want to make sure I say this correctly. So it authorizes the courts to assess and award attorney fees and costs and damages in certain civil actions filed against local governments. It requires local governments to prepare business impact statements before adoption of proposed ordinances. Specifically requires for posting and content of the statement, it requires counties and municipalities to suspend enforcement of certain ordinances subject to certain legal actions. So in the event that you were to pass a local ordinance and somebody brought a suit against it, it instantly nullifies that ordinance until the suit is handled. So this has a big impact on local governments and their authority to make choices closest to the people. This bill was heard in committee already. It has 11 yeas and 4 nays, with one Republican stating that she didn't support the bill, but she would move it along to make sure that they could work through it. This bill will also change, even though it came out identical. This one is the priority of the Senate President, the sitting Senate President, so I anticipate you'll see this one move in the Senate as well, but with a lot of changes, I think, in its future. So just to keep that in reference. And then there's another bill, I didn't have a slide for it, but I wanted to bring it up. It's House Bill 515 and Senate Bill 886 about municipal water and sewer utility rates. This bill came out and it has to do with requiring a municipality to charge customers receiving its utility services in another municipality the same rates, fees, and charges as it charges consumers within the municipal boundaries under certain circumstances. So this would impact, should you have a utility that you are providing to someone outside of your area, you no longer can charge them a different amount, even though they're not paying into maybe the infrastructure that was required for that area. So we're going to keep an eye on that one as well. It has not been heard in committee yet, but again, keep you abreast of anything that happens with that. And then the last one is the budget request that was filed on behalf of the Village of Tequesta for the regional park improvements. Representative Joe Costello was kind enough to file it for us. It provides an appropriation for the Tequesta regional park improvements, and then our Senate sponsor, while it doesn't need a bill in the Senate, it does have to have a form and a number, and Senator Bobby Powell was kind enough to file that for us. What will happen next is we will get the bill heard in a committee, excuse me, and then it'll be ready to move into the budgetary process. Now, the governor did just put out his provisional budget, has lots of great things in it, and I will tell you that what the very, very intelligent legislators will do is they'll say, thank you, Governor, and they'll see lots of presentations on it, and then they put it in a desk, and then they do exactly what they want to do. But I do think you'll see some things come out of it. There's I'm trying to think what some of the highlights were. There's more funding for cancer research in there. There's an increase in salaries for law enforcement. That's been a big issue for the governor as well. There's some changes to retirement systems in there, and it's a very big budget. It's one of the largest budgets ever been proposed. It was $99.3 billion, but we have the money. So it came out today, so we'll all be combing through that to see what it was. I can tell you that my understanding is that no special projects were put in it. So it's a very broad-based budget. It doesn't necessarily have a line by line on how to spend each thing. So that's where we are on that. Okay, so redistricting. That's the next topic at hand that's looming over the legislators. So redistricting takes place after the census every 10 years. All legislators are up for re-election next year because they all get new numbers, they all get new districts, and they are basically discussing how to draw their lines right now. The House draws their map, the Senate draws their map. They each draw a congressional map that they have to agree on. And then they basically have to number and draw boundaries, and then also follow constitutionally the constitutional amendments that were passed. So fair districts, that was passed a few years ago, or I guess before the last redistricting. The Senate has their map out right now. Currently, you can see it on this beautiful website, floridaredistricting.gov. You can also submit your own maps. So if you're looking for a real exciting couple of hours, you can also try and draw a map and submit it to the legislature to follow it. There's a lot of very restrictive rules, like you can't draw a line through a lake, you can't draw a line through, you have to use natural boundaries, you can't draw it through the middle of anything, so best of luck. I tried it one time and I quit after about 30 minutes and realized that the map drawing was not for me. But that's taking place right now. The House hasn't released their map. They should have it out pretty soon, and then congressional maps will come out as well. There hasn't been a very large shift that we've seen in the Senate. There's one rendering where you might have a House or a senator that will drop down a little further, but again, they're still working through all of that as the process moves forward. This will be the dominating issue that will take place after before the budget. So getting these lines drawn is the most important thing, because they all will go to court and have to be litigated after they draw them. And then it'll be election time if all the maps are drawn and everything's done. Session will end March 11th. Campaigning will start right after that. And then the primaries will take place and the general in the coming months after that. And then we're back in Tallahassee for regular session starting in March. So that's pretty much everything. This is our contact if you need to reach Jack, Keena, or I. We are always available. You can text us, you can call us, you can email us. We answer pretty much all the time, and are happy to have any of you come up and visit, let us know. But again, if there's anything we can help with, or if you have any questions, that's what I'm here for.
Aaron, thank you. Council, questions?
No. Oh, really? Really?
I do have one, and
Okay.
I didn't really want to ask you, but why did they take and pull the OSHA part away from the state where they'd separated? What was the reason for that?
Because of the federal issue with the vaccine mandate, it comes through OSHA. So in order to remove us from that entity that would oversee us and bring that fine, they have to create their own portion of it. And I'll be happy to share the bill and the overview of it. I can tell you that now they'll have to fund it. They'll have to have a whole entity that will come up with it. Normally, in other states that have left in a more calculated way, it took them several years to even develop the plan and the framework for how they were going to leave. But we're going to do it in 1 year. So I think it'll be interesting to see exactly how that moves forward. And there'll be a bill that will have to be filed to outline exactly how it's done. But the intent was to basically say, you can't tell us that we have to vaccinate everyone on, let's say, an OSHA regulated area. So we're going to change that in the state of Florida, and we're going to have our own entity that's going to tell you the best practices to keep your employees safe.
Who was kind of instrumental in making that happen?
The governor.
Kind of what I thought, yeah. All right,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
So a couple things that you mentioned, just give me some ideas.
Okay.
It appears that some of the first bills that you talked about, that there's really a shift to try to have more of a judicial branch make law. Why would the legislative want to reduce or relieve their power to do that?
The intention of most of those bills is reactionary to the shutdowns that occurred because of COVID, and an effort to allow businesses to operate no matter what. So it's a very pro-business reaction to what had happened due to the virus and shutdowns taking place. I don't think that that the legislature thought about the fact that they were going to basically put a lot of the strain on the legal system to make these choices. But I think because of the makeup of the Supreme Court and how it feels, they feel pretty confident in how they'll move forward with that.
In this moment.
Yeah, okay.
And then the other thing is, like, if there's like a 15%,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the business is losing its 15% of its business, would a Florida Department of Transportation shutting down a bridge have impact on that?
That's a great question and was brought up in the committee as well. We actually were, I was talking to the mayor about this earlier, where if we had a situation in another city where a business was constantly getting flooded because of a sewer system, right? The sewer system gets backed up, the business gets flooded. So we tore up the street, we're gonna fix the sewer system. Well, you weren't doing great with a flooded business, but you also probably aren't doing great because we tore up your street. And either way, you could have lost 15%, but if we never tore up the street, then you don't have an action against us. So, like I said, there will be some changes in that bill. I'm not sure also how you quantify 15%. So how do you directly say, because DOT came and they tore up my street, that is directly impacting the problem, or is it because maybe I don't have as much product? Maybe something else happened. So directly, I think you have to show some real causation to say it, and I think that has to be, is something they're gonna have to think through, yeah. Again, some of these bills come out in the summer in a real tight incubator where it's just do this, get it done, write it, and then they bring it in front of the committee as a whole, and people say, well, let's talk about how we're gonna actually, you know, sometimes the words sound great, and then people come up and say, maybe you should think that through.
Okay.
And I think specifically with these two bills, that's what will happen. The other language I didn't talk about is vacation rentals. That was a really big issue last year and the year before. There are two bills out right now. They're pretty neutral, and they don't have a lot of legs, meaning they don't seem to be a real focus this year. But we'll keep an eye on them as well. It's a really kind of dulled down, generic idea of how to kind of legislate from up there down to more restrictive areas that are saying, no, you can't do this, you can't do this. But again, we'll keep an eye on it, see how it moves. But I think your main your biggest issues are going to be those other two bills, because they're going to move, much like the home business bill did last year.
And any mention on any enclaves, getting rid of those at all?
Not that I have seen yet, but I have a feeling it's probably going to come. It tends to come up, yeah. Okay. So I'll keep an eye out for sure. Mm-hmm.
Aaron, thank you. Just one other item. You and I had a chance to talk a little earlier, and I was just wondering if you could provide just a little bit more color around our budget requests and
yes.
what's taking place there.
So your budget, well, I guess I'll bring it back to that. So your budget request was filed, I'm trying to think, I don't have the date in front of me, but it was filed, we did a request for the entirety of the project. The reason that was done was after speaking with both of the sponsors. There is a feeling in the House specifically that they don't like people coming back and taking teeny tiny bites of the apple. So putting out there the entirety of the project, as well as what Tequesta is going to also offer on in the maintenance of it, was strategically done so that at the very least we can cut it into chunks and move forward, but wanted to be open and transparent about the actual cost of it. Senator Powell also expressed a desire to do the entirety of it. I think it's a good strategy because I have seen other projects come, get funded one year, not get funded the next year, not get funded the next year, and then get funded again. So when you come in and you kind of let them know, hey, this is how much it's going to cost. If you don't give us all of it, that's fine, but we're going to have to come back for more, and then they know about that. And so strategically, I think that's probably the best bet moving forward. The fact that Tequesta is going to basically maintain the investment is a huge asset to the state. A lot of these requests that come in are for reoccurring funds, for things that happen over and over and over again. And so while it isn't a reoccurring fund, there often seems to be more wiggle room in the budget when you come in for a non-reoccurring fund. So this is money that we don't have to pay out every year. It's not like a money we have to pay to a health provider or something along those lines. So I think there's definitely some great asset to that. Moving forward, we're going to put it on the radar too that past, I don't know if Jack has even said this, a past Senate president used to play baseball there. So President Joe Negron used to play baseball there. This is something that is an asset to him, and Senator Simpson and him are quite good friends. So there are positive aspects to it that we think it's going to come out ahead. So I think you got a great opportunity. I looked at all the stuff. I've been doing budget for about 10 years now, and it definitely was one where I thought we have a great chance of coming out ahead. There are some where you're like, oh, okay, well, we can ask. But this one seems like a good opportunity, especially when it comes to land maintenance. That is something that has become more of a priority for the governor as he's moved through kind of environmental stuff into trying to make sure that we preserve a lot of the great space outside in Florida and promote it, that this is a great opportunity for people to get out there. And because it serves multiple areas, that also is an asset, right? This isn't like one little maintenance for one little area. Everyone can benefit from it. So I think you have a great opportunity in this.
All right, thank you very much. Anything else? All right, Erin, thank you.
Thank you,
Safe
yes.
travels back to
Thank
Tallahassee.
you.
All right. You, thank you for allowing us to defer you.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I'll hold up a bit till the manager see the PowerPoint is up. So basically, the primary purpose of my being here before you for this particular item is that Article 3 of the Village Charter requires that within 90 days after the close of the fiscal year, that we present to you the results of the financial results of operation for the previous fiscal years. And so what we have done is that we have kind of taken a view that the numbers that we're going to show this evening, they're unaudited numbers. However, they do paint a fairly accurate picture of the financial results of operations for the village.
You have the clicker there, it might be easier if you.
Oh.
Is it there? Oh, Aaron did it.
Okay.
Down is up. Go the other way.
Yep. Nope, the other one.
Oh, so down is up, okay. All right, so basically, so this, the numbers are unaudited, and, but we feel that they paint a very accurate picture of what's to come. The village's finances can be broken out into two main subgroups, and the subgroups are governmental funds and enterprise funds. And we have various sub-funds within those overarching groups. And the primary difference is that the governmental funds, they account for activities that are primarily funded by taxes, franchise taxes, property taxes, and what we call in governmental accounting jargon, non-exchange revenues, meaning that when the taxpayers and the citizens pay, they're not necessarily receiving the services at that point in time. For good measure, when we pay our property tax bill, we don't necessarily, we're not dialing 911. So, however, the services are there, but that's the main distinction between those funds and what we call enterprise funds. These are akin to your typical for-profit business where they're funded primarily by user fees and charges. So when we speak of the village's financial health, we almost readily think of the general fund. And why so? The general fund represents a good portion, primarily 65% of the total villages, not the general fund, but the governmental funds. The general fund represents a significant portion of our revenue sources as well as the village's operation. As the slide depicts, it represents the public safety, fire, police, code, all of the major services that are rendered by the village, with the exception of water, stormwater, and those enterprise type activities. Most of the services that we provide are accounted for in the general fund. So which brings us to why we would like to take a little bit of a deeper and first-hand look of the general fund activities. So for the fiscal year 2021, we had a positive budget variance of $624,000 for the revenues, owing primarily to property taxes. We have some increases there in local infrastructure tax, insurance premium tax, electric franchise fees, and half-cent sales tax. All of these revenue sources exceeded budget. In the charges for services category, the positive variance between over budget rather, was primarily as a result of the land development fees, which was $422,000 over budget, which represents 263.6% over budget, and fire plan review fees, which exceeded its budget by $146,000. The miscellaneous other category is negative, and ironically, that's good, because what that represents is a carry forward of prior year's encumbrance of $298,000, which represents a fire rescue unit for which we had an outstanding purchase orders. We also had $78,000 in lease purchase proceeds, which we did not realize, and the reason for that was that we had some cost savings with our SAN computer project, which we spent less on, so therefore we borrowed less, and that's the primary reason for the negative variance there in revenues. So the expenditure, the other side of the coin, despite what's reflected here, all of the village's operating departments were within budget. And it reflected that the fire department is slightly over budget. And the reason there was they had some expenditure that were in excess of their normal amounts, which I'll explain a bit later. But we did receive some word from the actuary that in fact our contribution towards the fire pension plan was in excess of what was required due to additional insurance premium tax funds received from the state. As a result, the $13,000 overage in expenditure for the fire department has now turned into a positive budget variance of roughly $30,000. We'll use this excess contribution towards our employer contribution for fiscal 2022. So the general fund revenues, when we compare the total revenues to the previous year, we have a fairly decent change. And this was primarily owing to some of the reasons that I discussed earlier, which is the increase in property tax, charges for services increased by $411,000 for land development fees. We had an increase of $142,000 in fire plan reviews. EMS transport also increased by roughly $89,000. And so we see some of the major revenue sources increasing. In the miscellaneous other, that represents the lease purchase proceeds that we received for the sand project that was discussed earlier. The general fund expenditures, we do have some significant budget variances in relation to the department's operating budget. In the interest of time, I'll go over some of the more, the larger ones. Finance, hopefully I'm not self-incriminating, but for the finance department, the variance there was as a result of us housing all of our salaries and expenses in one cost center. Historically, we have spread the finance department's salary over various departments, and we felt that it was easier for management and for council to be able to look to see the changes year to year and to look at, if you wanted to compare salaries, benefits, it's easier to do it there. And we distribute or allocate our costs in a manner that's akin to an administrative fee. So we no longer allocate the finance salary costs over various funds. IT, we had some reallocation of computer systems maintenance costs, approximately $123,000, as well as the general funds portion of the sand project, $102,000 was what led to the increase there. The police department had $90,000. The variance there was primarily due to $90,000 in computer systems maintenance being reallocated back to the IT department, and $35,000 for network switching refresh project that did not occur in fiscal 21. The remainder was due primarily to salaries and benefits due to the merger with the Northcom project. Fire, the increase there of $454,000, that's due to $298,000 for a rescue unit, $72,000 in salary increases, $40,000 in disaster overtime, and $51,000 in compensated absences due to a drop entry of an employee. And the interfund transfers, those are primarily driven by the total amount of collections in our surtax funds as well as our water utility tax. So this brings us to the net difference. What exactly is the net difference? So after we take into consideration our revenues and expenditures, we're left with a residual number that is fund balance. The fund balance represents our ability to meet our near-term obligations. And so there are several components of fund balance, but in the interest of time, I'm going to focus on one primary component, which we call unassigned fund balance. As depicted here, the unassigned fund balance, calculated thus far, unaudited, is expected to be around $3 million. And that represents a 60% increase from the previous year's balance of $1.9 million. And so what that is that when you compare that to our goal is to have at least 2 months worth of operating expenditures, roughly 17% of the total expenditures for the general fund in unassigned fund balance. We're currently at 23%. We had indicated earlier during the year that we're hoping to reach 3 months worth, or 25%, since we're a coastal village, and that is of primary concern to us with the amount of hurricanes and things coming through our way. So the next few slides, I'm going to not belabor you because these next few slides pertain to funds that for which the resources are restricted as to their use. And so once we take in the revenue, we're significantly restricted on how we can spend it. So what we focus on is, are we taking sufficient receipts to cover our expenses? For the building fund, for this year at least, the answer was yes. We do see that in some years, expenditures have outpaced receipts, but for fiscal '21, that was not the case. The other governmental funds, the restrictions are noted here. The Capital Improvement Fund, that's funded by the infrastructure surtax and the water utility tax. For the capital projects, those are usually funded by long-term bonds and notes. And the Law Enforcement Trust Fund is funded by asset forfeitures. So each fund, pretty much, they have a slight increase in the fund balance reserves. The Capital Improvement Fund, I should note that the state is just perennially late with sending us our allocations. We just received the September allocation for the infrastructure surtax, so there's a great likelihood that this amount will be even higher, the ending balance for the surtax fund. It will be higher than the $373,000. The Capital Projects Fund, we're showing the total expenses, because in the fiscal year, we've already collected the loan proceeds, and so we're just reflecting all that we have spent, which is primarily on the recreation center. Special Law Enforcement Trust Fund, we hope to have around $157,000 remaining at the end of the year. And then we are at the Enterprise Fund. And so the Enterprise Fund's chief concern is, as I had mentioned earlier, is the recovery of their operational costs. The Water and Sewer Fund, as the chart depicts, is pretty much holding its own. The expenses rather, for the enterprise funds, they're fairly stable. However, for the other two enterprise funds, we're approaching some degree of imbalance with the revenue and expenses. For the Refuse and Recycling Fund, you could see the line is slightly ahead of the bar graph, which brings up, which is primarily the reason why, and I'm flipping ahead to the next slide for you to see the Stormwater Fund. And this fund, there is a good amount of imbalance here between revenues. The expenses are outpacing the revenues, and therein lies the reason for us increasing the rates for those two particular funds. I know we increased the water rates, but these two funds in particular, we really wanted to show that we needed the rate increase to kind of bring it back into alignment. And with that, I'm available for any question that you might have.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Molly, would you like to lead off?
Sure, sorry, my notes. I guess my only question is, is more for council, is I know you guys set the goal of, what was it, 17% for the reserves?
Well, 2 months operating.
2 months
Was the
operating,
original- was the
and
original.
I know there's discussions of setting it to 25, but we would have to do a resolution or whatever the case is for that. So has there been more thought or discussion on that?
Well, we had some discussion about going to a 3-month, reserve, but I don't know that we made it, I don't know that we had an agreement that that was going to be a definitive policy going forward, but I know we talked about it.
Yeah, we're looking at that policy. We haven't brought it to you. We haven't been given direction on that, but we were going to bring it for a conversation for a workshop at a future date.
Okay.
I would support that and think we should move that forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and we'll put that on one of the workshop agendas. Bruce, any questions?
No, I think, I mean, it's awesome, the fact that we're finally moving and thinking the right direction in that area. So great job for everybody involved.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor, and Vice Mayor.
I did have one question for you. The building fund, obviously is performing very well right now. We know we've probably got the 300 building coming on Beach Road. That's going to generate some significant fees. And I know they're targeting perhaps another building or two. And we've got a restriction on how that money can be spent. Are we going to run into an issue on this as we go forward?
There is a rule, and the building official is not here, that we can have so many years of total operating expenses in the reserve.
Correct.
I believe it's 1 or 2. I don't want to quote myself incorrectly, but they give us a leeway of how many years operating expenses we can have in reserves. And right now, I think we're close to being at that point, roughly.
We're looking
But I
at it,
could-
I mean,
yeah,
I
could
think we're in good shape right now. I mean, obviously, we're not gonna count any building until it gets approved and starts being built, and if we have to make adjustments, because if you don't use those funds within, I think it's 4-year period, you do have to give them back to the developers. We obviously don't wanna do that necessarily, so we are looking at that fund. We've been looking at it for a couple of years, and so we'll advise you guys as needed.
Okay. Well, I know we don't want to count our chickens before they hatch, so to speak, but I also know that we need to be aware of what's possibly coming down the pike and not wait for it to happen, but maybe, give some forward planning to how we might address it should these things come to pass. That's the only, I just want to make sure we're prepared, that's all.
Definitely, yeah, that's a good.
Okay.
I have one more question. On the unassigned balance, I know this is unaudited. Is there anything that you guys know is hanging out there that might change this at all, or?
Nothing whatsoever that we could think of. We have made a good amount of adjustments and we're closing out the books, but all of the significant amounts and so forth have been incorporated into these numbers. There may be, we're still looking at the ARPA funds. We did take receipt of $1.5 million for this year, and we're having some dialogue with the auditors as to how exactly to account for that. We calculated lost revenues at about $612,000, which we have budgeted for fiscal '22 to use it towards what we call essential services, public safety, so forth and so on. However, we're still in dialogue with our auditors, and we spoke to them just recently, and they're saying that the federal government has yet to issue the final rule. So it's up in the air as to whether and at what point they will allow us to recognize what they call lost revenues. We have already calculated the lost revenues due to the pandemic of $600,000, but we did budget those funds to be used in fiscal '22. Yeah, so that's where we're at. That's the only X factor.
Well, and the only other thing I'll say to that, so this is at September 30th, all that what he had said holds true, but last month we did approve the fire truck expenditures, so that's $1.8 million. Until we receive our loan proceeds, it counts against that unassigned fund balance. Once we receive those, so according to this report, yes, everything is true, but, we don't necessarily have $3 million in unassigned fund balance as of November when we approve the fire truck. So when we receive those loan proceeds, we'll be able to credit that and get back to that. So that's a little bit of the outstanding there. So getting to 25%, may not be realistic until we receive those loan proceeds.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
And that could be there for 2 years.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. Sure. All right.
I'm sure the fire department hopes not. So.
All right, thank you very much.
I did one more question real quick. The auditors, I know that's a new relationship. How is that relationship been?
It's coming along fantastically. They've had webinars which we have attended, and they plan to start field work, I believe, in January.
Okay.
They usually take us on fairly early, and the assistant finance director, Tatiana, the entire staff, they get things done fairly quickly. So they'll be starting in January or thereabout.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you very much. All right, that ends the presentation component. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion on the consent agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next is communications from citizens. Mary Ann, do we have anybody who would like to speak this evening? No? Okay. So now we move on to communications from council. Mr. Prince.
Good.
Molly?
I would just like to say, I know all of council received the email that Captain Harris, firefighter Evans, and firefighter Weicker all helped the resident change out the batteries on our smoke alarms. I just hope they get recognized and no task is too small, and that resident was very thankful. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay. Kyle?
Only thing I'd add is shop local right now is going on. So go around, collect your receipts. If you're buying something locally that's well over $10, turn them in. Pass the word along. I think it's a good opportunity for our businesses and our residents to connect.
I would agree. And the only thing I'm going to add is I just want to thank Doug and his team once again for doing an outstanding job with all of our Christmas decorations around the village. Village green here is absolutely beautiful. You guys do a great job every year, and thank you again for all the work that you and your team do. Okay, now we're going to move on to standard reports. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I need to report to you and ask for some authority to work with the village manager on the issue of the settlement and the village's participation in the settlement agreements that will be upcoming in all the national opioid litigation that's been going on. So over the last several years, the state's attorneys general have been working towards trying to fashion a settlement agreement. We've gotten to the point where that is happening. For purposes of Florida and Palm Beach County, and then the village of DeQuesta, this is what we need to do to participate in the receipt of the maximum possible proceeds that we could be eligible to get. We are considered a municipality, a non-litigating municipality, because we don't have our own lawsuit against any of the pharmaceutical companies, with a population of less than 10,000. So that puts us in a situation where we don't have to jump through quite as many hoops as some larger municipalities. What basically has to happen is that in order for any settlement agreement to move forward, the way they've been structured is that the state through the counties has to get what they're calling critical mass sign-off, which for municipalities means they're looking to get sign-off from sign-off meaning participation and approval of participating in the settlement agreement. So the critical mass means 50% plus one of the population of people that live in all the municipalities collectively. So in order to get that, there is what they're looking for is for certain municipalities to sign a memorandum of understanding and a resolution approving that, but that only applies to municipalities with populations greater than 10,000. So we don't, not only do we not have to sign that MOU or pass a resolution, even if we did, it wouldn't be counted towards getting to the critical mass. What we have to do in order to participate is sign what is being called a, it's basically a participation agreement, which is a much simpler process, doesn't require a resolution. The manager can sign it with council's consensus. It basically says that we desire to participate in the settlement process and receive funds from that settlement process, that we will accept the allocation of funds through the settlement. And by the way, they've done, they meaning the Florida Attorney General's office has done a really rough estimate of what we might get, and it's based on so many moving parts that it won't be completely accurate. It's based on, you know, an assumption that the appropriate number of the critical mass will be reached and in the appropriate time, and that the settlement will move forward as contemplated. But I think the estimate for Tequesta was about $82,000, something like that, and that sounds really good. But then that's spread out over like an 18-year period of time. So really, you're looking at a couple $1,000s a year for 18 years. There are significant restrictions on how those funds can be spent. Obviously, they have to be spent on opioid-related mitigation, you know, addiction treatment, and law enforcement, and crime prevention, that sort of thing. So, so we accept the allocation of funds. We accept the restrictions on how those funds can be spent. We would waive our right to file an independent lawsuit related to the settlement issues, which I don't believe is an issue for us. I don't think there was ever, I'm not aware of any appetite that the village ever had to pursue its own litigation in this. And then we would release the defendants from any further claims regarding these opioid matters.
Just as a municipality.
Correct. Yeah, that this is at the municipal government level. So, for the municipalities that have to sign the MOU and pass a resolution, there is actually a deadline of January 2nd. Again, we don't have to do that. I wanted to report to you on this, and my ask is that the council authorize the manager to execute these participation agreements. There's two. They're basically the same document, but one is they're against two different defendants. Which would put us in the position of being able to participate, and I said get the maximum possible amount of funding. There really are two pots of money the way that this settlement's being structured. One goes directly to the counties, and this is the money that goes to Florida. So there are other states involved, and once you get to Florida, this would be the money that goes to Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County would have the opportunity to spend its own money or further distribute it to municipalities. There's a second pot of money, which is the $82,000 that we're talking about, which in order to participate in that's where it's important to sign the participation agreements and get, basically say we're on board with participating in this settlement. And as I said, that $82,000 is certainly by no means cast in stone. I'm quite certain that will change. And regardless, even if it's in that ballpark, this will be spread out over a significant number of years. So it is some revenue that the village can receive. It's not, in my opinion, a significant amount of revenue, but it's something. In order to participate fully, though, we need I need council's permission and authorization to let the manager sign off on those participation agreements, then we can get those signed and filed by the end of the year.
And we can do this by consensus?
Yes, this is not the MOU. It requires a resolution. This is a much simpler process. Because of our size and our non-litigation status, we're able to enjoy this simpler process as opposed to the more complicated one.
So, is everybody in agreement on this? I don't see any downsides.
Yeah.
Are there any downsides?
In my opinion, no. There really, as I said, that we were never in a position to tee up our own litigation. I mean, there's still a lot of things that have to happen before this settlement is actually signed and a done deal. If they don't reach critical mass with the municipalities that have to adopt the MOUs and resolutions, the whole thing could fall apart. If there are delays in time, that can have adjustments on what the ultimate dollars are. So there's still a lot of moving parts, but this is the village's path to participating to the fullest extent that it can
But
participate.
if we do nothing, we collect nothing. If we take this action.
If you did nothing, you may receive some funding through the county through that first pot of
Right,
money.
the first pot.
But if you did not sign on with the participation agreement, the way I understand this is we would be foreclosed out of participating and getting anything out of that second pot.
Okay. Sir, all in agreement? Yes?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I appreciate that,
We look
and
forward.
other than wishing everyone a happy holidays, that will conclude my report for tonight. That's the longest report I think I've given all year.
Thank you, Keith. Jeremy?
I just want to thank, all of our crews, Parks and Rec, Fire, Police, Doug's crew, the clerk's office for the successful event we had this past weekend. Our next event is our annual Ride with Santa that's on December 24th. We are still leaning toward completion of the rec center mid-February, and so we plan some activities for the ribbon cutting. The Charter Review Committee is preparing its final recommendation for council. It's still on track for the February council meeting. And then, as you guys know, but for everybody else, the Jupiter Narrows no wake zone has been challenged in court. And so Florida has decided not to pursue that any further at this time. So there's not a no wake zone there, and no plans for one in the near future. So with that, that's my report. Thank you.
Any questions?
I just have a comment on the finance update on the expenditure report. Could we add the notes column on there, like we have on the revenue, to kind of explain some big dollar item kind of jumps? It's nice to kind of understand between original amended budget and then target budget, year-to-date budget, or year-to-date balance. Just kind of big dollar swings, just a description there.
Will do.
That's a good suggestion. Yeah, explain the variances.
Yeah, thank you.
Just one question, Jeremy. The decision on the Narrows they said it was based on a technicality. It was a technical issue in the way that the study was done. So when Florida
It
says.
wasn't the way that the study was done, it was the way that it was passed.
Okay.
They didn't follow a piece of the administrative code that they have always followed. They didn't do it this time, so it was almost like they kind of bypassed it.
So they're just going to give up?
Well,
They're not
the
going to.
email that I got saying that at this point, they don't know the way forward, and they don't have a plan forward, so they don't, at this point, they're not pursuing it.
Okay,
So,
all right,
if I get any update, I will provide that to council.
all right. Mr. Bradford?
Yeah, Tom Bradford, 44 Chestnut Trail, Tequesta. My understanding from that, in regard to your question to Jeremy, was that it's basically that the Florida Administrative Code doesn't define what too much motorcraft traffic is.
The definition of congestion.
Yes, the definition of congestion. So if I can't remember the agency, if they would take the steps to quantify and, make it such that if these factors are met, then therefore it's got too much motorcraft traffic, and therefore it's congested, and therefore we could do what we wanted to do, and that is to restrict the wakes and the whatever the other thing was.
Okay. All right,
That's how I
thank you.
understand.
All right, Chief Medina, you are up.
Evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. For the month of November, there's been several events, as Manager said, Run for the Pies, Holiday in the Park, Tequesta Tunes and Truck. I also participated with Doug Chambers and Hugh Dunkley with our fleet service maintenance contract. The usual meetings with the Palm Beach Chiefs Association, Law Enforcement Planning Council. For the month of November, again, the Bureau of Land Management stats, we had 40 hours worked. We had 111 contacts during time and 1 warning. Obviously, all of it is reimbursable through the agreement. The Marine unit, we had 32 hours of service. We had 26 contacts, 6 vessel stops, 7 warnings, and 1 assist to boaters, and that was also 32 hours reimbursed by the Manatee grant. In regards to training for the month, Jerry Lynn Palmieri and Carvance Norval went to report writing. They're two of our newest officers. Speed measurement, Jerry Lynn is actually there now, should be finishing up tomorrow. Sergeant Blanc is at FBI Leader Executive Leadership course as we speak. And then the Police One Academy that you all remember that you had passed to allow us to be training remotely and via online. We've done a couple of trainings, situational awareness for all the officers below 100, which couples with what Pastor Paul does in regards to keeping the fatalities of officers on traffic stops and reduction of suicides. Trying to get below 100 is the goal with that. We also had Palm Beach County come out to the officers and give them training with all the victim services that they offer and resources. So I have nothing else.
Any questions for the chief this evening?
No.
I know we say this every month, but your guys and gals do an excellent job out there. And you read about what's happening across the country with increases in crime, and thank God we're not seeing that here. And I think that's also, it's a testament to our citizens, but it's a testament to the work that you guys and gals do every day. So again, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Chief True.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor.
You going to top
Council.
Dave?
What's that?
You going to top Dave?
No, no chance. And I don't think that can be done. But good evening once again. In the last month, we also attended our usual meetings, Fire Chiefs Association, EMS providers, the usual suspects there. I did have a meeting with Jupiter Inlet Colony staff regarding hurricane shutters. They're in the process of possibly writing an ordinance of their own, so they're looking at ours. So I've directed them to talk with Jose, who's much more the expert there than I am. Regarding training, firefighter Sambelli completed his firefighter 2, firefighter Evans completed his firefighter 3, and firefighter Wilhelm completed his firefighter 3. So we had 3 people moving up here just in the last 30 days. Company training, we were able to get to Palm Beach Gardens and conduct facility training there with 6 other companies. I believe at the last meeting I mentioned that we would be going. When we did, it was a good turnout. That's really going to be something that's going to happen quarterly. So I'm excited to see that program develop. At the last minute, or the 11th hour, I should say, we were invited to Palm Beach State. So next week, I've got at least 1 shift going down for live fire training, possibly all 3. I'm still waiting to see if I can work out all the coverage issues that come up at the last second for that. But we're excited to be a part of that as well. They'll be conducting search and rescue off the hose line. So again, it's something we don't get to do very easily without the facilities and the props, so we're excited about that. Our public outreach, as the police chief mentioned, there were several events: Fall Fest, Run for the Pies, the Trucks and Tunes, the many events that we go to over the holidays. I'd like to add to the event on the 3rd and the 4th that weekend, the Christmas event in the park. Greg does a fantastic job, and if you didn't know what it was like around here before Greg, I'm just saying there was a noticeable increase in what we can do in the parks, and I think he does a great job with it. It's always well organized, and we're just glad to be a part of it. We will be taking part in the Christmas parade on the 12th. I've got at least, I think, three vehicles in it. So probably our utility, our aerial, and maybe the golf cart. I haven't decided yet. It's either the golf cart or my truck. I'm not sure. By the way, I know you approved a Ford Explorer for the fire chief on the 15th. The truck is in, it's striped, I'm driving it. So it all worked out pretty well. And it drives nice, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Emergency management, COVID-19. We are monitoring the new COVID-19 variant, Omicron. As soon as I have something that you probably don't hear in the news, I will be happy to report it to you. But right now, I just say take the normal safety precautions that we've all learned over the last nearly 2 years, and I think we'll be okay. And then on the bright side, of course, hurricane season is over. So while I still keep an eye on it for a couple of weeks, should be okay, at least until next time. And then last, Captain Dan Tillis, one of our original members, is retiring at the end of the month. We will be doing his last call here at the fire station and presenting them with a flag on December 31st at 7:30 in the morning. So if you're around and you want to come out and see the last call ceremony and the sign off and the flag ceremony, come by and join us. And I believe his retirement party is on the 8th, so there's a few people looking forward to that too. But that one strikes me because I go back to 1993. You know, Dan and I are the last two of the original members of the department, and Dan was on my shift. And I'm not going to say anything else about it because it's going to come out in the retirement party, so you'll just have to come to that. But we have a few war stories. I've been actually getting calls from longtime firefighters around the area that remember Dan Tillis as a young firefighter and even a young officer. And they always start with, hey, when you get your chance, make sure you tell this story. Make sure you tell this story. So we have a few in the bank, and it's going to be kind of a roast, I think. Anyway, that's my report. I will wish you Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And do you have any questions for me?
Any questions?
No.
Thank you, Chief. I think the department has been well served by you and Dan, so it'll be a great time to wish him good luck with as he moves forward with his life. So
Yeah.
I certainly plan to be there, and I'll see you bright and early.
Sounds good. Look forward to seeing you.
All right. Matt, there you are.
All right, good evening. A few things on the utility side. DigSafe First, which is who is a sub-consultant to Kimley Horn, is in the field, mostly on the north end of Country Club Drive, doing underground utility locates as part of the design for the water main replacement project, or that segment of the project. There was some planned stormwater pipelining that was expedited this last month to address some growing settlement on private property. That was completed, the repairs made, and the property restored. So everything's good there. We are in the process of coordinating with Jupiter Hills Club on acquiring 2 easements across that back entrance roadway into the golf course. Those are to provide separate electrical feeds to the 3 wells over there. Right now they have 1 feed that then daisy chains down to the wells, and so we're working on, as part of the well replacements, we're working on separate feeds in there.
Okay.
The Floridan well rehabilitation begins next week. There's a pre-con meeting tomorrow. That'll start with well number 4, which is behind the public service facility, moving to well number 3 right over here, and then well 2 over by the water plant. Initially, the only thing that would be visible to the public would be some temporary piping running behind Village Hall in between Gallery Square North and Good Shepherd. Last thing I have is that we've been issued the draft industrial waste permit by FDEP. That permit is for the disposal of the concentrate generated by the reverse osmosis system. That's a 5-year permit renewal. That application was put in time, draft permit issued, and in just a week or so, the 30-day window closes and it'll go final. That's it that I have. Any questions?
Any questions?
No.
All right. Thank you.
I had one question for you.
Yeah.
When we went to the automated meters, the thought was that we were losing revenue because the old meters, in many cases, as they got older, they weren't as accurate, et cetera. We've also had some rate increases, obviously, to address capital issues. When I was looking at the revenue chart that we had in here, and I'm looking at it from year to year to year, from 2019, 2020, 2021, the change in revenue is pretty de minimis. And it looks like most of that probably could be accounted for due to the rate change. So the automated readers are great. I'm not in any way dismissing the wisdom of making that change. But as far as capturing additional revenue as a result of that, I know we've saved, I think, on the expense side, but did we really see any material benefit in terms of, from a revenue standpoint, in making that change?
So we're really going to start seeing the results of that over these next several months, or just from this point moving forward.
Okay.
If you notice the consumption
which is Mary Ann has on there. That chart there, you'll see that our year over year, which the first bar and the last bar, we're significantly higher than November of last year. Last year is, and there's a number of variables that go into that. Some of that's actual consumption, some of that's metered, some of that's improved accuracy in meters. There was a lot going on last year that went into just a different year as far as consumption. Okay. And so to tease out meter accuracy, we're really starting to hit a normal usage pattern, and we're going to start seeing that. We're going to start seeing that change in billed or measured or metered consumption moving forward. But particularly between August and December of last year, our consumption was very abnormal. But now things are starting to level out, and I think we're going to start seeing those true changes to that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not too much, I don't want to add extra work unnecessarily, but as we go through this next year, then it would be interesting if we could do an analysis to look at the change in revenue and how much is driven by rate changes versus how much is generated by capturing a better utilization of the whole system by all the consumers. So, okay. All right. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we don't have any old business. Moving on to new business, the first item is a request for time extension from Key Estates to Quest to Senior Housing. Nelsa?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Key Estate at Tequesta Senior Housing is requesting a time extension per section 78334H. In 2017, Key Estate Tequesta was approved for 96 units for an assisted living facility. Later on, Key Estate Tequesta requested a time extension per the governor executive orders. So that time extension was up to January 12, 2022. So it's coming, the deadline is coming next month. So it is important to remark that this site has contaminations of arsenic and petroleum. And because of that contamination, the applicant also requested to have a brownfield designation. So that brownfield designation was approved by council in 2016. So right now, the applicant is requesting a 1-year extension to their development order. And I believe they have a presentation.
Thank you, Nelson. For the record, George Gentile with 2GHO Inc., representing the Key Estates Tequesta project. I don't know, Mayor, you may have been on the council when we approved it. I don't know who else was. No one else was on the project. This is the north portion of the old Rood Nursery project. And as Nelson indicated, and as you all approved, the council approved back then, it was designated as a brownfield site because there was 2 contamination issues. One was the petroleum leak that was done by the landscape operations that were on that property for years. And that was the most critical one because it was actually a plume that was migrating and damaging some of the wells to the residents to the west. I'm very happy to report that that has been going on, the cleanup and the remediation of that has been going on for this long a period of time, since we came back to you all, when we came to you first with the site plan. The owner who's here with me, Mr. Thomas Farr, that some of you have met, he received a letter actually this week from Palm Beach County, ERM, that they are satisfied that the cleanup is complete, and he will now not have any other conditions placed on that site. Very briefly on the arsenic level, The arsenic level is an issue that we have here in Florida. Everybody's soil here has arsenic in it. I don't care where you live in Florida, you have arsenic in your soil. At FDEP back prior to 2015 had a level that they allowed as a standard level on properties, and there was no issue. If you went above that level, then you had to do remediation or dealing with it. Arsenic is best dealt with, believe it or not, by paving over it so that the rainwater doesn't pull the arsenic down farther into the groundwater. Unfortunately, when we came in for the site plan approval in 2016 and started the process through 2017, the Florida DEP raised the threshold level, actually lowered the threshold level, let me put it that way, and made the site in non-compliance with arsenic. So the remediation for that is to do some cleanup in some areas where we may not be paving or building on, but everything else would be covered up with the site. But anyway, for those of you who weren't here, this is the site plan. It's a assisted living facility. The public, so that everybody back here can see. Okay. A very nice project. It has independent assisted living and memory care units that all equal to the number of units that Nilsa indicated to you. So we're here tonight. Mr. Farr he is from Italy. He was not allowed to come to this country for a couple of years, as many of us had our businesses even closed down for a pretty long time. He's here requesting that he be provided per your code, a 12-month extension so he can get going with the project. And as we did on the other extension, he is also requesting that if there's a possibility that the village could waive the $2,500 fee. That fee has been paid though already to the village, so you know. Okay, so that's our request. We'd be glad to answer any questions, and Mr. Farr is here also to answer any questions you have. Okay.
Thank you, George. Kyle, you have any questions? You want to start?
There's been a lot of history, I guess, on the site, and I guess there were some litigations that recently took place. I'm not really familiar with what has happened, or is that even relevant or anything?
There was no litigation. You need to come up and give your name. Right.
Yeah, name and place of residence.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Thomas Faure. I live in Milan, Italy at the moment. The past 2 years, this government wasn't allowing people to fly in, or I had to do 2 weeks, what do you call it, quarantine, and it made it pretty difficult to fly over here. As far as litigation, what happened was that in 2019, I worked with I signed a PSA with a local Miami investor, it was a Polish company who had about $300 million worth of assets in Poland and had 18 people working in Miami, and they checked out pretty well. They were interested in funding the development, and we would work as the developer for them. And so we started working, and we did the construction drawings to build the facility. And in October, when they were meant to pay, they told me they didn't have the money because they had problems in Poland, and they asked me for another month. And after that month, they said they didn't have the money, and they couldn't pay, but they still wanted to buy the property without doing the development, and that wasn't what was written in the contract. And they sued me for breach of contract, but immediately asked for a settlement. So they were trying to shake me down for whatever they could to actually their attorney immediately told me that they wanted a settlement, and so we've been. Then a few months later, I found out that the founders of the company were in prison in Poland for creating a pyramid scheme and defrauding 1,600 investors out of about $68 million. So we've been in. I certainly not the. I don't give up easily, and I refuse to settle. And now the last Friday, the suit was dismissed by the county court here in Palm Beach, and so now there's really no issue with with moving forward with the development, and we're very excited to to move forward and to be now free and clear from any any issues, and we will resolve the remaining issues if there are any, because we haven't tested for arsenic for the past 2 years, but if there are any issues, we will resolve that. We already have a RAP, that's a remediation action plan approved by the FDEP to remediate the arsenic. So when the work will start on the property, that will happen.
Do you have a plan? If we move forward with this, do you have a date set up for construction start or bidding to start?
We don't have a date set up. We're just I've come back. I was able to come back only a couple of weeks ago, but I've been working 24/7 with investors, and we're getting everything. So I should think that we'll have something. I can communicate with you towards the end of the first quarter about how we're going to proceed.
Have you identified an operator?
Yeah, we have an operator that is still the same operator that was with the original plan.
Okay.
Good. Bruce, any questions, Molly?
Yeah, it just, on the development order, there was some annual reporting that was due, and it sounds like maybe the annual reporting hasn't been done. I don't know if Nilsa, if you can talk about that.
The development order that was for the special exception use 2-16 included 3 conditions of approval. The third condition of approval was says that the applicant shall implement controls into the approved site plan and provide documentation evidencing regular, consistent controls and evidencing ongoing cleanup activities that are reducing or eliminating the exposure risks to human health and to the environment. Said documentation and cleanup activities shall be based on the current environmental best practices. Said documentation shall be provided to the village on an annual basis until the exposure risks to human health and to the environment have been eliminated. That was the special exception use condition of approval, and then the site plan review condition of approval refers that the applicant shall comply with all conditions of approval contained on the special exception use. So to answer your specific question, I have not received that report, that yearly report.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to pursue that line of questioning any further?
No, I mean, I guess I would like to get current on the annual reporting. I don't know if that's a separate.
No.
I do have the letter that was dated December 3rd, 2021, from Palm Beach County that they have completed. They just are certifying that the work has been complete. So if I can give that to the clerk.
Please. So, maybe following up on both the comments of both my colleagues. My concern is whether this development is going to take place. I was here when it was originally approved. It was, you had the full renderings. It was a beautifully designed building. It was a facility, as I recall, that allowed people to go from independent living to assisted living to memory care, all within the same complex, depending on how people's situations changed. So it was a great concept, and I think the council at that time enthusiastically approved it. But again, it's been 6 years since the original approval, and then 5 years since the final site plan. So I understand there's been a number of things that have occurred. We've had COVID and other things, but my concern at this point in time is this really going to move forward? Are we going to be here a year from now being asked once again to provide another another extension? Love to see the project built, but to the Vice Mayor's comments, I'd like to see some definitive information being able to be provided to us that gives us some reason to have faith and belief that this thing is actually going to move forward. Having said that, I guess I'm inclined to give you the shot personally, but I can tell you if it doesn't materialize this time around, I would not approve another an exemption or extension in the future. And if you find that you're not able to move it forward along the lines of what Molly is saying, I would expect you to come and tell us that. Not wait for the year to come up. But if you're not going to be able to move it forward, come and tell us that if and when that occurs.
Mayor, before the applicant responds, I can just advise the council under the code that the extension is being asked for. The code allows an applicant to ask for this extension. The code's very clear, though, that there's one-year extension, so there would not be an opportunity for any further. This would be the last extension if the council was to grant it. Okay. Under our current code, there's no opportunity for any future extensions after this. Okay. Under our code, yes. If the governor entered more executive orders that could be taken advantage of, we have no control over that. Okay. But for our code, this would be the one and only one-year extension available.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Thank you for that clarification. So,
and we are aware of that provision. Yes.
The corner that had basically whited out, is that where the home is? That is not.
Yes.
Yes.
I noticed that house went for sale in the last 2 years or so.
He didn't sell it.
You didn't sell it?
Mm-hmm.
No. Yeah. So there's in the nook that sort of encroaches, for the lack of a better word, into our property. There's the old Rood house. It's a wooden home. That's I think it's sold for just under $400,000 in May, I think it was. And the people next door actually talked to them this afternoon. They're very happy to live there, and they're looking forward to the land being developed.
Okay. All right.
And yes, I mean the amount of work and goodwill that I've put into this, I'm very excited to have this project going, and I should I can't carry on just having this property without doing something with it. So I'm pretty definite something will happen this year. Okay.
All right. Any other thoughts? All right. Well, I'm going to call for a motion on this item then.
I'll make a motion to pass this and also waive the fee.
Okay, well, that's a separate item.
Is it?
Yep,
Okay.
so, okay, so a motion to approve, do I have a
So
second?
moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. Okay, now we can move on to item 10. This is a request to waive the fees. Vice Mayor has made a motion. Why don't you
Yep.
restate it at this
I'll
point?
make a motion to pass this.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
No.
No. 2-2.
Yes.
So it does not pass.
No action taken on a 2-2 vote.
Okay. So at this point, would we be looking to bring this up again, or we just leave it as it stands, and the applicant can come back and make another request, or
Yeah, it hasn't been approved, it hasn't been
denied?
denied. On a 2-2, there's no action taken, so we can talk to the applicant about coming back when there's a
they want to.
fully seated council if they want to. But as we stand tonight, it's
It's still in force and effect?
correct.
Okay, all right.
We appreciate the extension, and we will talk to staff about other options. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
And we will ensure that you're kept informed on what's going on.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen, appreciate it. Okay, item number 11 is an ordinance. Keith, would you do the honor, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 17-21, an ordinance of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances of Chapter 78, Zoning Article 9, Supplemental Regulations, Division 7, Home Occupations, to revise applicable home occupation regulations in accordance with recent changes in state law, also amending Chapter 78, Article 9, Section 78-294 nuisance, to provide standards for all uses in any zoning district, further amending Chapter 46, Motor Vehicles and Traffic, Article 3, Division 2, Section 4671 definitions, to amend the definition of commercial vehicles to include heavy equipment and machinery, providing that each and every other section, subsection in Chapter 78 and Chapter 46 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes. This is first reading. This ordinance is brought to the council in order to bring the village's current home occupation code into line with changes to state law that went into effect as a result of the 2021 legislative session. The new state law creates significant preemption for local regulation of home occupations, still allows certain things. We're allowed to collect a business tax. We're no longer allowed to require a separate home occupation permit as our code does now. So that is probably the most significant item that's repealed out of the village code in this ordinance as a result of this state law. Statute still allows local regulation of what are considered secondary effects of home occupations, things like parking, traffic, signage and advertising, aesthetics, and nuisance factors like noise, vibration, open storage, smoke, radiation, all that sort of thing. But otherwise, regulation of home occupations can't be more restrictive than regulations of commercially zoned businesses. A couple of the most significant changes besides the permitting process. It was typical code, and our code contained a prohibition on employees who don't reside in the residence. Now, state law allows up to 2 employees to work in a home occupation setting who do not reside at the residence.
Just 2?
Yes.
No more than 2?
Who don't live there.
Who don't live there.
Right. You could have, we used to say none if you didn't live there. Now you can have 2 employees come into work every day and leave under the new statute. We are still able to have annual inspections for code compliance in general, as well as fire safety, so that will continue, but it will not be under the guise of a separate home occupation permit. So that's what this ordinance does. It brings our code into conformance with the legislation that was adopted this past year for home occupations.
This is a public hearing, so it's now open to public comment. Mr. Bradford?
So, Keith, based on, Tom Bradford, 44 Chestnut Trail, based on what you said, you can't have a home occupation permit anymore, but are you allowed, is the municipality allowed to have what's called a business, what is that thing?
Business tax receipt?
Yeah, business
Yes, we're
tax
still allowed
receipt?
to
Okay,
assess a
perfect.
business tax and collect a business tax receipt. Absolutely, that is correct.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, it's closed to the public. Time open for council discussion.
Good.
Any comments? Okay.
I have a quick-
Oh, go ahead.
How do you identify that there is a home business? How does that happen?
Well, while we're allowed to regulate parking and traffic, there may be client traffic that comes and goes. We are allowed to regulate signage and advertising. You're still not allowed to put up a sign on your house that advertises your business. They're supposed to pay, as Mr. Bradford pointed out, they're supposed to pay a business tax in order to run the business. So we're supposed to know through the payment of a business tax who's doing that sort of thing. Under the old code, really home occupations were limited to some small, I think it was 20%, you could use 20% of your house, and it typically was an office type of use because you really weren't allowed to have even store stock in trade at the property. You weren't allowed to do a lot of things that there will be some changes now under this new legislation. You technically could store stock in trade as long as it's not stored outside and doesn't impact the neighbors.
Can I give you a scenario?
This is, sure.
A resident has a painting company. They have 2 paint vans, and 3 employees come and get in those 2 paint vans and leave. But they come back and park those paint vans at the house.
So parking of commercial vehicles is still, that is still one of the things we are allowed to regulate. So if the commercial vehicles were parked
All behind.
without being properly screened or in a garage, that would be a code enforcement issue that we could cite.
But they have 3 employees that don't live at the house, come, park their cars, and take them.
So, and that would be a violation.
Okay.
One over. Now, enforcing that obviously takes a little bit of detective work, and we'd have to bring the evidence to the magistrate for that.
Jeremy, do we actually have record of going into homes that have employees or systems like that or situations like that?
I can check.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Because there's not supposed to be any employees outside of the residence of the home right now under our current code. So that's going to be a change.
So just to follow up on that, though, if they're not working out of the home, if they're simply coming and picking up a van and leaving and they're doing their work away from the home.
I'm not sure that qualifies as a home occupation in the first place.
I mean, they may be a home business for the owner of the business, but that's why.
It's just a parking spot.
Yeah.
You still can't park your commercial vehicles in your driveway.
Right, the commercial, that I understand.
Yeah.
I know we can, let me just, it says it generally preempts all local governments from prohibiting, restricting, or otherwise regulating home business in a manner that is different from how traditionally located businesses are prohibited. We do require traditionally located businesses to file some paperwork with us that indicates they have a business within the village.
And they'll have to pass the inspections, they'll still have to get the business tax receipt.
Okay, so to answer, because the vice mayor asked that question, how do we know if they have a home business?
I mean, it's entirely possible that somebody could try to fly under the radar,
Try
not
not
pay
to
home
do those
occupation,
things.
try and be sneaky about it in terms of vehicles and
And so
people
what
coming
would
in.
be the penalties for someone who doesn't properly register their business?
So then there would be code enforcement, depending on the violation. If it's a secondary effect type of violation, that would be a typical code enforcement case that you would assess daily fines. If it's not paying a business tax, state law has a very specific penalty scheme for somebody who doesn't pay a business tax, and the business tax is due October 1st, and then if it's 30 days delinquent, I think there's a 10% penalty, and then 5% for every month after that, up to a maximum of 25%, plus you can assess another penalty and your administrative costs, and then
So in making this change, the village probably needs to undertake some type of an educational and communication effort to make sure that
people are doing the homework.
people are
Yeah.
properly educated and informed of
Yes.
what their responsibilities
I
are.
think that would be a wise thing.
Okay, all right.
Aren't we workshopping that? Or were you guys were already looking into getting how new ordinances are passed or revised, getting information out on the street? Weren't you guys looking into that, staff?
We talked about a process, having a clear process. I mean, like when we talked about before about when this would take effect, because I know there's concern about us just throwing something out there and do that, and we can set those times when you want to take effect. So when we do second reading, if you guys want to say we want to start, February 1st, gives us 30 days. I mean, that process can be stretched as long, but I mean, we can put something together for this, and, obviously we wouldn't put it in effect until the second reading, but if you guys want to put in a 30-day window for us to advertise and promote, then we can.
I think the idea was to come up with a protocol for everything, not just pick and choose each ordinance. Like, this is what we'll do in general for every ordinance to get the word out in the street.
I think Keith and I talked about, we got to be a little careful with that because, some zoning ordinance or some things you may not want to wait, 60 days. You may be trying to put it in place. So we had this conversation. We can have it further at a workshop, but, just to talk about the ins and outs of that.
Well, it keeps coming up, so I think it'd be worth putting on a workshop agenda eventually.
Yeah, it may be a case where not one size fits all.
Yeah.
But I do think in this case, yeah, if it affects somebody, they need to be able to come in, do the paperwork, properly set themselves up. So, if we're gonna do a second reading in January, maybe we set February 15th, for example.
Right. And you guys can set the date to whatever
And,
you guys.
the effective date of an ordinance is at your complete discretion. There, with a few exceptions, there are some things in state law that have a certain effective date requirement, but an ordinance like this, for your information, if the ordinance itself did not contain a specific effective date, state law says it's effective 10 days after adoption. We have, for example, when we passed the Florida-friendly landscaping ordinance years ago, there was a fairly significant lag time before it became effective for an educational campaign. It was several months, if I'm not mistaken. So that is completely at your discretion. That can be changed at second reading if that's the council's desire.
All right. Mr. Bradford?
I think you are barking up the right tree to want to have a public relations aspect to this. An eagle eye code enforcement officer that makes regular rounds on a regular basis should be able to eventually pick up whether, these 2 cars are here every day or these 3 cars. That's easier than the most serious problem. And that is based on my experiences that when these home occupation things take off, people think, oh, I can quit paying rent and I'm going to move this all in home. But the biggest threat is storage of chemicals and flammables in a garage that used to be, say, at a storage facility somewhere with sprinkler systems. So it becomes very, very important that, he's gone, the chief, the fire chief, and then they hunt down these things and do the annual fire inspection to make sure that safety is paramount in those single-family homes typically where that happens. So y'all seeking to let the public know and then having a program to effectuate what it is you want to do, that's all very important. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments? Can I have a motion, and if you wish to put a time effective date in that motion, we can do that.
What is it now? I don't have.
Pardon?
What is it now?
It would be 10 days after the second reading unless we give a date certain.
As written, it's effective immediately upon adoption at second reading. That's standard boilerplate that we put into all the ordinances
And we'll do
like this.
second reading mid-January, so.
But again, that council can change that date to whatever it wants.
So would somebody like to put forth a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve. I'm in favor of workshopping this topic that keeps coming up and having more of a clear and precise plan than kind of just picking and choosing. So I'd be in favor of approving this as it is, and then workshopping this about, you know, extending communication to the public, extending effective dates, deal with that separately.
Okay. I think I would delineate between the workshop request and the motion on the
I make a
ordinance
motion to
itself.
approve the ordinance.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I kind of would, on that topic, I kind of would like to see kind of the execution plan of this ordinance, of what's the plan with the current plan that we've been doing with fire chief going out and doing the inspections, code of compliance going out and doing their inspections. What does that currently look like, or what is it going to look like moving forward too?
So I can, not to substantively answer your question, but procedurally, you don't have to have second reading in January. If you wanted to have these discussions in a workshop setting
We could do that.
in advance of second reading, you could push second reading back to February, for example, or even March, quite honestly, without having to start over again. So I'll just throw that out as something to consider as well.
I'd say push the second reading to March.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the ordinance as it's presented at this moment in time. And then we'll also then request a workshop in the interim period to decide on how we're going to communicate and what the effective date will be. Okay, so do I have a second on this item?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, moving on to item 12, Mr. Corbett, this is an authorization to piggyback off the state contract for the community center furniture in the amount of $37,000.
Happy holidays, everyone. This is this agenda item is to purchase furniture for the rec center that's coming up. It went through the RFQ process. Hugh did a phenomenal job in putting it together. Went through that and came back through Keith's office, and now we're at the piggybacking off the state contract bid here. So that's what this is. If anybody has any questions, I'm here to take them.
Any questions from the council?
Any delivery issues?
8 weeks. That's what we're being told.
So it'd be 8 weeks once we approve it and you submit it?
Correct.
So you're looking at February, basically?
We hope.
Mid-February, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you have a contingency plan if it doesn't show up? Because I've been dealing with projects where furniture's coming on this date and it's pushed a week and it's pushed another week. I mean, it's happening everywhere.
We'll use the, Wendy didn't have a desk at the old building. Kathy really didn't have a desk. I can use mine. So we can kind of use like what we're using right now, you know, at the temporary office if we have to. So that's kind of the backup plan. Yeah. And I've looked into renting office furniture and all that stuff, but I don't think it's possible. So yeah, we'll just use what we got if we have to.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Greg. Mr. Hammond, where are you? There you are. Okay, this is approve a contract. This is the disposal main temporary relocation.
Yep. Last four. I was considering practicing being able to read like Keith through resolutions, but I'm just not quite there yet.
On one breath?
Years of practice.
All in one breath.
Years of practice.
So this item is for the award of the contract for the temporary relocation of the concentrate disposal, the diffuser, which is the kind of a pipe with holes in it that disperses and spreads the concentrate that's generated from the reverse osmosis treatment facility into the Jupiter Inlet. This is required as part of the replacement of the Federal Highway Bridge. This project was put out to bid on October 27th. Bids were received on November 17th. We received 2 bids. One of them was blank. So we essentially received a single bidder, which was the Hinterland Group, in the amount of $225,900, which includes a $10,000 contingency. The front-end documents, including the agreement on this, are use the new village standard front-end documents that we worked with Keith's office to prepare that are based on the boilerplate EJCDC documents that have been modified for the village's use. Work is anticipated to start right after the new year and wrap up with 2 months and get out of the way so they can start working on their bridge.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, any questions from the council? All right, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Mr. Hammond, you're still with us. This is the agreement with the folks that are developing the reserve along US 1.
Yep, so Royal Tequesta LLC owns the property that is known as the Reserve. They're under construction right now, which everybody sees as they go down US 1. One of the items that came up is under a portion of the backside of the property, the west property line abuts the Village Water Treatment Plant property. There's a significant grade change there between the Reserve property and the water plant property that currently has a pretty steep slope between the two. That in order for them to complete that work, they're going to have to go onto the village property in order to do whatever they're going to do there. And so the first part of this is a temporary construction and access easement that gives them it's the legal instrument that gives them the ability to do that portion of the work along that strip. The second part of it is there was, as part of this, there's a slight modification to what was in the original drawings, which had a retaining wall along the property line. That will now be or is proposed to be a graded slope reinforced with turf mats sodded and pinned. In consideration for the temporary access, construction and access agreement, they have agreed to maintain that that slope in perpetuity, and that's the second part of what's before you is the maintenance and access agreement. The fencing there, the current fencing jogs around this slope back there. It's grown over with mostly Brazilian peppers, and it's pretty steep and messy. What will remain will be a grass sodded slope that the developer, and then I'm presuming they're going to turn that over to the Property Owners Association to maintain, with fencing around it and a separate gate to be able to access that. Both agreements were prepared by Keith's office, and they have signed them without any modifications.
Okay. All right. Any questions, comments from the council?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is it, looking at the detail, I don't understand it correctly, is it, the grading is to create the swale at the back of their property, or the west elevation of their property, is that right?
So the swale was already there as part of the stormwater infrastructure on the property. It's the backside of the swale where there was originally the retaining wall, and now there's proposed to be a graded slope. Either way, the retaining wall or slope, they can't do that work without going partially onto the village property.
Right, and just we've looked at it, and we're sure it won't create any like drainage issues or anything on our property?
The functionality of the drainage system is the same.
Okay, thanks.
The goal is for them to maintain the water on their site and then disperse it.
That's correct.
And then you maintain your water on your site. And
correct.
Could create an issue on your site.
What's that?
It could create an issue on the village property if water puddles in
If
that
the
area.
soil overflows, right, that's what I was getting at, have we looked at that, and it's sufficient?
Correct, and that the functionality of that is the same whether it overflowed over the retaining wall or overflowed over, it's the same. There isn't a change in risk to that.
You're just saying in order for them to do the work on the site itself, they need to cross over into our area, the village's area.
Yes, that's one aspect. That's regardless.
Right.
That has to.
So we're letting them do that, and then in return, they're going to restore everything in a manner that's acceptable to us and make sure that the drainage issues are as they are now. They're basically the same standards are met, and there's no adverse effect to us, and they're able to accomplish what they need to accomplish.
That's correct.
Yeah, the only question I had on this was the duration of the agreement. You know, we talked about 2 years from the effective date and then possibly a 2-year extension. I had the impression they were going to move a little more quickly to complete that development. Do we have the 2 years, is the 2 years really truly necessary, or? I'm asking that this is an open-ended question, I don't know.
I think we all
Nielsen
certainly
would
hope
probably
not,
be our
right?
best
Yeah.
question, our best person to answer that.
Yeah, I think we all certainly hope not. I mean, you can drive by and see the progress that they're making pretty rapidly.
So is it 2 years just to be conservative? Best
Yes.
guess? Yes, okay, Nelson's not here? Okay. All right.
And the water plant's still protected at all times throughout the whole process? There's a
Yeah,
fence of some
yeah,
sort?
that's what I was mentioning. The fence right now actually jogs around this slope. And so that does not affect the security of the plant.
Okay.
Okay. And during the work that's being done, there's not going to be any significant increased risk from flooding or from drainage or, okay, all right. Okay, can I have a motion then, please?
Yes, so moved.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
Mr. Bradford?
Yes, sir. Tom Bradford, 44 Chestnut Trail. This is really the only reason I came here tonight. I saw this and read it, and it worried me. I have had problems in Palm Beach before with something similar to this. There's an LLC formed, probably solely for the acquisition of this property and for the development of this property. And it says in the agreement that, and I'm paraphrasing, so please forgive me, but it says words to the effect that the responsibility that they're promising to you is going to fall to their successors and assigns.
Correct.
Okay. And I have had situations in Palm Beach where a HOA or a condo board ends up coming back saying, well, we're not the successor or the assign, and they've won. And so that makes me think that you're in better standing to make it very clear that the HOA or whatever it's called, HOA that is intended to be created for this the townhome development will be the successor that takes over the maintenance of this wall, so that there's no ifs, ands, or buts about who's responsible. That's the only issue that I see in your entire agenda, actually. So that's why I was here, and I wanted to mention to you that I've had that problem. Specificity comes in handy. Keith will probably say, well, yeah, they're a successor and they will be an assign, but I've had it backfire before. So I just wanted you to know.
All right. Keith, you want to comment on that?
I'm not familiar with the specific example Mr. Bradford's giving you. I would opine that they would be a legal successor and assign. On the other hand, I would have no objection to making an amendment to the agreement to be specific, that to reference the future Property Owners Association as being a responsible successor and assign. I don't know what that does timing in terms of getting this thing going, but I would have no legal objection to making that revision to the document, if that's what the council wants.
I'm assuming at this point that the HOA obviously is not established yet, so.
I wouldn't.
So it would
No, I
have
don't
to
even
be,
think it's
yeah, it would have to be
built yet.
language that directed it toward whatever that successor entity is. And they would be, I don't know how much, I don't know if that makes it a lot stronger at this point, or.
Well, and I don't recall, or, typically the way these things work is the developer retains control until
such
some
time.
significant portion of the residences have been sold. I don't know if that's gonna happen in the next 2 years even. So it kinda gets to your
the question
two-year
about the
window.
2 years.
It's entirely possible that in 2 years, it's still gonna be controlled by the developer.
Okay.
But, you know, I don't know for sure.
Okay. All right. So there's potentially some, I guess, do you really think there's any significant risk here? Are we, or is it something, if it came up at a later date and time, we could address it in an appropriate fashion?
I mean, again, I'm not aware of case law or any particular legal precedent that says, and I don't know what happened in that case. I mean,
Right.
In my opinion, I don't know why the entity that the developer hands responsibility to would not be a successor and a sign. And again, you know, have they even started construction?
No. They've started their grading.
I would suspect that in 24 months, it would be unlikely that there would be a handover yet either way.
Okay. Which goes back to the 2 years then. Okay. All right.
There's a motion and a second.
Yep. So let's move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, the item 15, Nat, this is you as well, the piggyback contract to purchase the Ford Escape Hybrid.
Yep, so this is a budgeted item in the fiscal year 2022 budget, where there was $35,000 budgeted for this purchase. This vehicle is used by water plant personnel, mostly for collecting samples out of the distribution system. There was a specific request from them. Currently, a Ford Focus passenger car is used. There's a specific request for them for something more with more usable, more functional storage, as they have their coolers that they collect the samples in, etc. Looking at the purchase of this, what is proposed before you is and recommended is to move forward with a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. Most of the usage of this vehicle is around town. It's not going large miles. And so the majority of the time, this vehicle will run off electric power. They can use a level 1 or level 2 charger. Either one is fine. We're not looking to have a fast charge time or etc. But then there is the functionality of the hybrid motor to be able to have extended range if needed.
Okay, so we're going green. Any comments, any questions? All right, can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And item 16, Matt, that's you, and you know what, I'm gonna give you a chance to read this to see if you can compete with Keith. It's resolution number 57-21.
I don't think that's fair.
I'll time you.
So this resolution is related to the state revolving fund funding directly to the our water system improvements. This one is specifically tied to the first project that will go under construction under this, which is the Tequesta Drive Country Club Drive South project. One of the requirements of the state revolving fund when you submit is that you have prepared a facilities plan and adopted that. So with the adoption of this facilities plan, the next step would then be to submit the request, the application for a request for inclusion at the February 2022 FDEP meeting. They are quarterly meetings. Next one coming up would be February, and we have until the end of this month to get the application in. Just as a reminder, these are the drinking water state revolving fund program is directly related to water projects. Drinking water projects, as the name implies. It's funded through, or it's a discounted program that receives supplemented by federal dollars. Runs off the 20-year GO bond, and then there's up to 1.3% discount after that. The current rate, which may or may not be the rate in a few months come February, but the current rate is at 1.3%. Again, this is specifically tied to the first water main replacement project. There'll be another tranche, another group later next year that will be brought before you that'll include several more water main replacement projects and the upgrades to the water plant that are planned.
This just facilitates the funding for this particular
It's
endeavor, which we've talked about.
It's a
this
box that
previously.
you have to check in order to qualify for,
Exactly.
correct?
Okay. Again, open to council for discussion. Any comments, questions? Okay. go
I
ahead.
just have a quick comment on the form that it's not filled out, it's a blank form. I don't know if there's a reason it's blank, but in the future, it's helpful for them to be filled out.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at it, so blank form doesn't do me much good.
Point. Good point. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Any other matters? Anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up this evening?
Can we get a substantial completion update on the rec center?
A what? Sorry.
Substantial completion update on the rec center?
I've got one question. What's the village's standpoint on if you got a residence that has a tree that's overgrown over the road and, trucks and stuff are hitting it, people towing their boats and stuff are hitting it? Is it the village's responsibility or is it the homeowner's responsibility to maintain that within an acceptable height?
So generally, it's the homeowner's responsibility to provide that. So usually the homeowner has the responsibility from, on their property, I think, to the center line of the right-of-way. Now, we do have quite a few trees, like along Tequesta Drive, Seabrook, that our crews maintain, but typically, it's the homeowner's responsibility. You'd have to give me the location, and we can have a crew go out there and look at it and talk with the homeowner.
Okay. Thank you.
And you were looking for that when? This is a substantial completion. Are you looking for that update on that at the next workshop?
Tomorrow?
Yeah, I can just provide council an update. I'll get with Greg. We have that date, I'm sure.
Because I know we're meeting Monday, so.
Yeah, it can be brought up Monday.
Okay. All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. See everybody Monday. Thank you, everyone. For those of you who are left,